What you were saying about your young students struck me that I'm a millennial. Among my friends, I know that a lot of them have sort of pulled back from the lure of like hookup apps because we've all experienced what that is like and found it sort of unsatisfying and hard to, have good sex with a random person who doesn't know you and you don't trust. So what impact do you think that has on this phenomenon? Sort of like we've experienced and now we're reevaluating maybe?
The Grindr Tinder of it all?
Yes.
So
you wrote about that a lot in your piece.
Yeah, no, I did write about this a fair amount in the piece. One thing that was really surprising to me is when you try to kind of get data on this stuff, how ineffective and ineffectual a lot of apps for a lot of people. So for some people, they work really well. I think particularly people who are looking for casual sex, people who are really conventionally attractive, they're awesome. And this is, if that's your thing, like your golden age. I think for a lot of other people, though, they can be really inefficient and time-consuming. I think the last time that Tinder released this data, which they have wisely, for their own sake, stopped releasing, the average user was spending like an hour and a half a day on the app, which is a tremendous amount of time. And if you were spending that time doing other things,
like
you might
looking at Twitter.
Like, I was thinking of sort of old-fashioned things. You might be making more human connections. The other point, I think, is just like how inefficient that time is. So one guy I talked to who was he sort of described himself as a nerd on this, started like calculating his numbers, and he's like, I'm swiping 300 times to the right for every woman I have a text exchange with, let alone get a drink with, let alone have sex with. Now, clearly that's not everybody's success rate, but some other numbers I looked at suggested that's actually probably more typical than not. And I think also people are using it sort of as a digital distraction or diversion. The problem is that because it's become the sort of accepted way to meet people, especially if you're in your 20s, I think it's having effects on sort of how acceptable it is to express sexual or romantic interests in other contexts. A lot of people told me, like, I don't know if I can really ask somebody for their number. Like, that's kind of not really the way to do it. It might be inappropriate. I might offend them. It might be awkward. Like, fear of awkwardness was a big thing. One woman I really loved talking with sort of said, this has been really great for me as somebody who's socially anxious because it's really scripted. And I know going in that if I'm interacting with somebody on this platform that they're looking for the same thing that I am, and that takes some guesswork out. But she observed, I thought, with great self-awareness, that as time went on, it was making it harder and harder for her to do that same kind of thing outside of an app.
And I think there's a little bit of a contradiction there in the culture when we panic about people, and I'm not saying you're panicking, but we worry about people only, wanting, thinking they could approach someone or hit on someone on these apps, while at the same time we're trying to create a culture where you don't hit on people at work, you don't hit on strangers on the bus or the subway, you don't walk up to women on the street and say smile, but we need these places where by dint of entering them, you are giving everyone permission to approach you in this space. There are certain kinds of bars and clubs where it's understood you're in that kind of bar or club and you've chosen to be in that, you've made a choice to be in that kind of bar or club, and people can approach you. They're not assholes for approaching you. They're assholes for not going away when you make it clear that you're not interested in their approach. And so, I think dating apps can be a net positive. They can be a real time suck, and you have to have some self-discipline around how often you use them and how much of your time you sink into them. But broadly and for the culture, I think they're making our workplaces resemble what we say we want them to look like, which is less, a sexual marketplace, which it shouldn't be at all, because we all carry a sexual marketplace around with us in our pockets. I can't tell you the number of people I know, particularly gay guys, because I hang out with a lot of gay guys, who will see somebody attractive and then open their phone and see if they're on Grindr. Not go up to them, because going up to them might bother them, they might have a partner, they might not be interested right now, but if they're on Grindr too, even if they're in the same room or park or whatever, in an environment where if you wanted to meet somebody, you just have to go talk to them, you send out that indication you can approach me in this space digitally and virtually. And that can be good.